this lovely town of Hale. And you all see, you want to go over there so you can't see there. This is what it says, look, in 1877. A dirtier, squallier, less interesting town than Hale is not to be found in all of Cornwall. Its population is composed of fishermen, miners and labourers, and its 2 iron founders, or 10 smelting works and railway employees. So therefore, we recommend the tourists to leave Hale as quickly as they enter. Alright, that's the beginning of them, but there we are. Now we're going to talk a bit. We know that we've got a lot of heritage sites in Cornwall. There's 10, I think, and sadly, we've got one there, look. Part of them's in England. We ain't worried about that. That's up there at Tavistock. But we're down here somewhere. Cornish Copper Company. 1850, I'll get the years right now. 1756 till 1819. They carried on as the Cornish Copper Company till 1867, but they'd stopped smelting copper. They carried on then doing iron because they found a mountain in Anglesey in North Wales for open cast mining of copper, so it wasn't cost effective to dig it out the ground down here. So after about 1818, they cut everything down and they took it up to Wales, and that's how but they still carried on as the Cornish Copper Company. I've got to watch my time. They said 2 hours. You said they were nice. 3.5. Harbours of Hale. We're going about Harbours of Hale. 1779. They met chaps come down from Canal Green. 1779, and we got till 1903. Now we've got John Harvey. 1730 till 1803. Now John had 4 sons, 4 daughters. But we talk about men. When we talk about Harbours now, we talk about Henry Harvey. 1775 till 1850. Now, a little bit of a story about Henry here now, look. He had a little lady friend called Grace Tompkins, 1793 to 1865. Now, she lived in the house like an housemaid, you see. But he was a single man. But they had 10 children. And each one was called Harvey. And at the end, when he had the 10 children, because he never married her, he put a G on the end of the Tonkin. He used to be Tonkin, and at the end, so he knew they was his children. And they ended up living up there, Melanie House, which is, anybody know, by the St Michael's Hospital. You turn left as you go into the house, and Melanie House is just there, up there on the left. But that wasn't the thing. You could say he was a single man, was Henry. Now, he had 10 by grace. Now, sadly, one of his sisters passed away, and she left 6 children, so he took them under his wing as well. And then we know a bit about Richard, I'll go on about that in a minute, him and his missus. They had 6 children, so he was a single man and he took on 22 children. He'd do very well for benefits now, wouldn't it? Here we go. Now, you'll see this down Hale. You can see that I'm not a very good photographer because those little dainty hands there belong to my wife. And I couldn't see how to work it out, but look, that just talks a bit about Hale itself. There's Richard to the Isambard Kingdom, Brunel. Of course, with this here and this, we'll talk about this in a few minutes. The River Hale. There's St Ives Bay, and of course it comes in there, goes up to Copper House, and then down to Foundry down here. Anybody been down Hale lately? Yeah. Oh my gosh, never mind. Traffic queues, I lived down there. This is before 1852. This is the foundry itself, as we said, started in 1779. And there you are. And then you go on to the next one. And this is the early 1850s. Now, sadly, I've got to talk about it really, but over there is St Ives. Because I live in Hale. We can see St Ives, so I just say, when I go over St Ives, I just say to Mrs., keep the curtains pulled so we can't look out there. But that's St Ives over there. But this here, look, bridge, was designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Yes.
Designed by him.
Yeah.
Single track. This is another old, of course this is the new bridge that you've got there now, that was put up in 1888. And if you go to Asda, anybody ever go to Asda, just come out the front and stand up, and you've got where the road comes along there and goes along there, stand by the road, but not in the road, and look at the 11th stanchion, and it's sunk about 12 inches, you look at it. So I just say, if you're coming down from up country, get up off camera. He's definitely sinking. You have a look at it when you go Asda next time. Richard Trevithick, 1771 to 1833. Now he married Jane Harvey. That was Henry's sister. She was born in 1772. They got married in 1797. He died in 1833, but she lived till 1868. So she was 96 when she died. But we talk about, he died at the Bull Inn in Dartford in Kent. People say, well, he was a pauper. Well, no, he went there in 1831 to work for a company called Hall. They were like an industrial company, and because of his expertise, and when they said he died, they said his men buried him. Well, he was like a consultant in that firm in 1831 to 1833. So, but he's buried in an unmarked grave, really. So that's the thing. But because he went up to South America, 1816 till 1827. He never sent no money home, no nothing. So Mrs. didn't know where he was. But he was out Peru going around. Now this is what he come up with. You can well imagine anybody like us, I mean men and women, we all know what a Jan Luker is. If you want you working for somebody, you want to think, oh God, he's a good welder. I want something welded. You would ask them dinner time or evening when the boss has gone home to weld something up, wouldn't he? Well, we call that a Jan Luker. Well, this is what Richard Trevithick, he designed the first high-pressure steam vehicle. And he had that made down in Harbours of Hale. But it didn't go on the road in Hale, it went up Camborne. And we know the song went up Camborne Hill coming down, because there is a Camborne Hill and it went up backwards. And that was the 21st of December, 1801. That's the first car. That wouldn't pass MOT now. Now, 1804, for a bet, he went to Wales, Pennydower in South Wales. I think it's South Wales. Forgive me if it's not, but I know it's in Wales. And he changed that into there's a track laid there. 9.1 miles the track was. He took 5 carriages, 70 people, and towed that 9.1 miles in 1804. So that's the beginning of your trains, really. I mean, a lot of other people invented things to do with trains, but this is Richard Trevithick. I put this one in. This is the foundry there. That's the first White Hart, that one there, the first White Hart. And that was built by Henry Harvey for Jane Trevithick, because he was off Gallivanting, and that was now the Masonic Lodge, but that was built in 1824, that one there. I put this one in as a lovely picture, really, the plantation. That's King George VI walk, actually, but we call it the plantation. That's opposite Asda, down Foundry there. That's that. And the reason I put that in, because of this. This is not that bit, but that's just what that says on there. This is the Cunady stone. When Henry Harvey was going to retire in 1846, because he had a slight stroke, and he died in 1850, as I said, he wanted to build on the plantation, because they owned all that, build the house right up the top so he could see St. Ives and further afield. Well, when they were digging down 4 feet, they come across this grave. And what actually, when they deciphered what was on it, it was a person was died, and they were aged 30. They were buried in the 5th century. So we know that this was the trade route, or part of the trade route, coming from northern England and Ireland, coming down through. They would come into Hale, go to St. Earth, believe it or not, and then go up to Relubis, then just go across land to St. Michael's Mount and go to Europe. That was a recognised trade route. And that was from the 5th century. Can you still hear me in the back there? Yeah. I am lower enough, am I? No? Not my voice anyhow. Right. Now this is the White Hart that we know today. Yes, 1838. Because Jane had retired, and then I'm trying to think what the name is, but I forgot it, so I won't mention his name. But there, that's the first White Hart. But when I point this out, look at this. They had a royal crescent. Now I've researched it everywhere. I cannot find any information, only to be told that in the late 1800s there was a big fire in London, and a lot of the documents were destroyed. Because when you see the photographs now, there ain't no royal crescent, but there was one there. And this is part of Harbour's buildings there. Now I put this one in. Again, you can know where you're going into Hale. This was the main road, look, but they had tourists coming down, so they moved it back about 30 feet, took the wall down. Now, anybody know where the post office is down Foundry? It says post office, right? 1805 to 1853, that was Trelisic Smelting Works. And that post office was put there afterwards. Lloyd's Bank, well that's shut now, but look at this, 2 stories. They had a cinema down there. You'll see in one in a minute where it got burnt down in 1935. But that was built 1868. That was just called the Marketplace. Now, this is the Heritage Centre where I do a little bit of work and a bit of chatting sometimes. I will put that lovely little cupola up there. The first train station is in Isis Gardens, 1837. Not up, station there is up the top. This was the first one there, look. And it was demolished in 1948. But that train station went from there all the way up the Green, up the King George V Memorial Walk. Most ladies know where Marks and Sparks is, but years ago was a train line going through there. And it went up to Ingarrick, up Steamer's Hill, what we called. And then that train then went, part of it went to Patrice, they had another link to Patrice, but most of it went to all the mines in Camborne and Madruth. And it ended up at Trezevine near Lanner. That was the end of the line for the Hale Railway. So they was taking goods in, coming in the ships, loading it on the trains, taking it to all the main mines where you're going Thursday, innit? You're going down there. Yeah, no doubt they had all materials was being brought in by Hale. Now look at this. No, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. I can tell by his hat. Don't worry about that. But this is what in 1806 till 1859. Only 53 when he died. But look, I put this one in. Look at this. The chains are nearly as big as what he is. And I'd point out to a lot of people, one no Max Silver's end for lifting them up. When we go on about horsepower, that's what it was, manpower and horsepower. That's what they had to use their brains up. But look at all this. Those chains were the SS Great Eastern, but I should see that in a few minutes. I put this together quick yesterday and today, so I'm hoping it's all right. The Great Western, 1837. Just I point out about the weight and the length. 1837, the Great Western. These were designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, by the way. The Great Britain. 1843, yes, that's Great Britain. Well, we know it ended up eventually over near the Falklands, being a private enterprise brought it back. It's now in Bristol. It's one thing I had never gone. I got a job go past Camborne. We had put sat nav on tonight to come here, didn't it? But I'm going to go to Bristol very soon and have a look. But then you've got the Great Eastern. Look at that. 1857, early 1858 when it was launched. Look at the difference in the tonnage from there to there. Because when they were building this, they heard of a place down the road called Australia, and they needed to they wanted to take goods down there. Not many people had been down there. We know the roads was all down there, but they wanted to so they built this big ship, so they could fill it up with coal, you could steam all the way down and all the way back. The time it was launched in 1858, they discovered coal in Australia. So, it was mainly used for transatlantic cable laying. Cross over to America, South America, India, etc., all in Europe. That was one of the main things. You've got bridges, docks, hospitals, railway, ships, Thames Tunnel. These were all designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel. The Royal Albert Bridge. Put this one in 1857, I do. Now, the thing about this is, we talk about, I say about the coins. The Cornish Copper Company had all, Isambard Kingdom Brunel had all this material by the Cornish Copper Company. Nothing to do with Arvis. And Richard Trevithick had all this stuff done by Arvis, not the Cornish Copper Company. So, if there's any, so it's important, you think, but Richard Trevithick and Isambard Kingdom Brunel both worked in Hale and come around, and etc., But this was 1857, putting that up. So a lot of these links here were cast in copperas. Look at that, they are. 1859. I wouldn't have gone on no trial across the bridge, would you? Not first time with a train. But that middle stanchion there, is 80 feet down in the river. 80 feet to bedrock. And they were doing that in 1859, 1858 to get the, up like that. Now, Isambard Kingdom Brunel died in September 1859. He did come across that bridge. But we always associate him with the Clifton Suspension Bridge. He never saw that built because he died in 1859. The Clifton Suspension Bridge was not completed until 1864 because the Bristol Council could never believe that you could span that gorge. Well, he proved them wrong, even though he was dead. But they used his methods. That's the point. And it's still there. That's the most important. Here's what we could do down Ailes sometimes on a clear day without too much fog. I do tours down there sometimes. If you want to come down, I'll show you around for a couple of hours. Soon give you a headache anyhow, but there's lots of things. Workshops there and all things like that. Now this is now where the train station was. There's our heritage centre. This is a foundry, look. This is Harvest Foundry. Incredible amount of buildings and all was needed for a foundry itself. It wasn't just casting. Now I put this one in again. There now, look, that's Lloyd's Bank, the two things. There's the first white art, that's the second one. Look, there's no Royal Crest then. But look at that there, that's a grist mill. By the mill pond, it's a grist mill. It was fed by water wheels from the mill pond. Now that was taken down by 1939. We know it wasn't being used then, of course, but we didn't want to, I won't give away too much, but we had to be took down because the Germans, because it was such a high building, the Germans could use it as a point to start dropping their bombs over on the North Quay, which you'll see about in a minute. So that was taken down for that particular reason. But I put this in here. This is Cornubia Biscuit Works. It was one of the first, and in there, in the early 1901, 1902, there was a bonbon factory. In there, making bonbons. They're nice, aren't they? Anyhow, this here one is a biscuit factory. And that was one of the first automated biscuit factories from there. And that was from 1917 to about 1925. That's Cornubia Biscuit Works. This is what's left of the grist mill now, as we go under. Now, Harrods Emporium. If you work for Harrods of Hale, you had half tokens and half wages. So if you had £5, you had £2.50 money and the rest was made up in tokens. You had to buy all your daily needs in his shops. So it was a win-win for him. But in 1831, the government brought out the Truck Act, which meant that whatever you earned each week, and that's the only best way that I can say it, if you earned a fiver, you was entitled to a fiver. But it never got really made law down here until the 1880s, 1885. They were doing it directly down here. But anyhow, after 1885, it became law. And if you come down from through Copperhouse to Foundry, you look on the left, you see a lot of shops in people's gardens. That was the reason. As soon as they didn't have to buy anything off Harvard's, they built their own shops. And they could sell what they want. Now, the chapels, they built chapels everywhere, but this is Foundry Chapel. There's quite a lot of stuff going on inside there now. And 1845 from 1967, that is. Now, I tell the people, this is not a lie, I will tell you. I just will tell you first as last. I'm one of 10 boys and 3 girls. That man on the corner now, who I am. Over there, he's part of my family. He ain't no brother or nothing, but... But my twin sister was married in August 1967, and I think when the man looked at, we got there 130 in Ale at the minute. I think when he looked at all the congregation, his oldest family, they shut the doors. There was only one more person married after my twin sister, and then it was closed. That is true. This is what we're talking about, horsepower. This is just taking a boiler over to Wheelbore near Alston. 36 horses needed for that. Now this is a pattern store. It's just got a bit more drink in it. Sorry about this. You can see this. If you go by Asda, but you look, see that building, you can hardly see it, but that's where Dewson's is now. Dewson's the builders. It's a long building. If you go in Penzance, have a look at it, look up top. It's got bricks and all in it. That was the timber drying house for Harbours of Hale, and it's still there. And they wanted to demolish it, but of course it's now listed, they can't touch it. That over there. But these were the pattern stores now, but not now, because they've been all done up. They've had a 3 or 4 million grant to do them up and make them into offices, you know. The mill pond. I got the mill pond and hammer works as well, because the mill in the 1790s, because when they started building ships, Harbours built altogether 79 ships complete on South Quay. 79 from 1823 till 1895. But they had it's not fast flowing now, and they could only work it then was with wheels, you know, and then they went to a bit of steam, etc., and then they went to hydraulics. But this was in, and of course, when they needed shapes, the hammer mill is what it is. It was in there beating and making shapes for ships. And if you worked here, in there, if you go down Foundries, you're going up to St Michael's, you look on your left, there's a row of houses. It's called Tremetta Terrace. But in 1810, when they built them, it was called Mill Row. So you went out your front door, you went about 30 feet, and you was in working. You had a row of houses for everybody that worked in there. That's a nice picture, isn't it? Go on from there. Now, Drover's Row, you're going up St Michael's, and on the right, Drover's Row is what it is. You don't hardly see them houses. All the horsemen that worked for Harbours lived in them houses. And if you were the foreman, you lived at the top, because you had 2 bedrooms and 2 downstairs. Everybody else had 1 of each, you know, 1 up, 1 down. You had to push in the best you could. But that was called Drover's Row. Now, anybody know the White Hart? Yes? Yeah. I just showed you that minute earlier on. I said that building by the White Hart is a building. Well, we call it the Colosseum. Here it is here, look. This was Harbour's machine shop. You imagine when you're casting anything, no matter who you are, and you put it on a ship and send it out South America, and when you get there, it don't fit. Because they got me machined. They had to be, you know, with whatever they had to do, what we call fettling them and all like that. So they would make sections, put them in that building, put them together, and when they worked, take them apart and put them on the ships and send them away. Now in 1984, the local council decided we want more houses. On a Thursday night, they passed this, completely said yes, it's all passed, ready for houses, and that's what's there now. Within 10 days, it was demolished, gone. Nothing left of it. It's a huge expense it was, you know. So that was really why Hale Foundry Trust was formed, but now it's Hale Heritage. We're trying to preserve, like we are in all our towns, aren't we? We're trying to preserve a little bit of what's left, you know, because what's behind is for our future, for our children, isn't it? You know, to learn. But there we are. That's right opposite the White Hart now. Now look at this. This is a bit of an interesting thing. I didn't bring that up, did I? No, I didn't. You can see now this is the biggest cylinders ever made in the world were made by Harbours, but the Dutch government come over at HAYLEP1. Anybody been to Schiphol Airport? No? Well, in 1846 it was 20 feet underwater. Not now, you're right now. The Dutch government come over and they wanted somebody to pump out this HAYLEP1 lake. And they come to Harbours of Hale, Cornish Copper Company and Permawertho. And they all got together, but they're being cast in Hale. Look at that 12-foot diameter. It's never been created ever since. But they were made and then shipped over on a boat to Holland and put together. And of course, there's part of the designer. He's Jabez Bickle. That's Francis Harvey, and that's Billy Gilbert. You can tell who the bosses are by looking at their hats. So, anyhow, so they loaded them up and they took them all out. And they started in 1848. And by the summer of 1851, they had created over 112 square miles of land. Pumped out all that water. That's 3 pumping stations. But the Crucius, which is still there as a museum now, that was still pumping in 1931. Now I went over there, as I said, I don't go far, but I went over there in 2018. I thought I must go and see this. You look here, look, you see all these, because they all got to be joined together, as we know, nuts and bolts. Well, I went over and had a look at this here, just because I used to work on the roads as shutter and building bridges and all. I thought, just want to see what's down below. So they took me down the bottom anyhow. When we come back up, I said, I'll have a cup of tea. I said, oh, nice. This lady come forward and presented me with a nut that they'd taken off that day from that unit, put it in a box, and presented it to me. So I'm going to bring it back now. It was cast in ale in 1846. Of course, when I got to the airport, it was in my bag. And this is true. And then, as we were getting ready to, you put your bags all through, and then my name was called out, so I had to go to the thing. And the customs man was looking at me, and he said, yours? Yes. What's this here? I took it out and explained all about it. Made in ale, Green Holland, and coming back to ale. And he said to everybody there, one nut taking another nut home. That now is on my mantelpiece, isn't it? Yes. That's it, there they are. You've got to imagine that cylinder, look. It was round, of course. It goes up in and out. But when you look at all this, look, what don't just, I mean, fantastic. And they brought people in from, say, Land's End right up all the way to Truro. All the tradesmen all went over to Holland. And when you go over and say that you're from Cornwall, they treat you like kings, really. Here we are, look, Harbours of Hale. I know it's Harbours, but most of it was done by Harbours of Hale there. Now this is significant as well. Again, if you, by the mill pond, you're standing there, turn right, you've got this archway. This is what Henry Harvey, this was going to be his grand entrance to his big house in the plantation, up there. It's just an archway, really. All these walls are still there. And anyhow, I'm going to say, 30 years ago, Cornwall Council come there one Monday morning, could demolish it all, take it all down, because the lorries couldn't get underneath it. Now, nobody knew, but the late Hamilton Alton, he was 98 when he died, but I know him as a personal friend. Farmer come out with a double-barrel shotgun. And they left. And the time they got back to their base, he got that listed. So it can't be touched. It's there forever now, it's fantastic really, it was saved. I'm just going to put the thing in, I know I'm diversifying a little bit, but are we right for time? Yeah. What time is it? 7 o'clock, is it? Anyhow, just here, if you go on to the arch, it's very historic, because I'm going to America, and that's going somewhere else in October the 5th. You've heard of Rick Riscola, a man in 9/11? Well, I do his life history. We look after his memorial. We've just got a pathway designated in his honour. His son and daughter come over in March to unveil it for me. And I've been invited back to America, so I'm going in ground zero and wherever, and then in the background I'm going to have a couple of days with Susan down wherever she lives and one thing another. But Rick Riscola is a house where I call it Drover's Row. It comes around round. That's where Rick Riscola and his mother lived. So, there should be a plaque on there really, but that's one of our next things to sort it out, Here we are, look, this, again, we're talking about manpower, look, just getting in a little cylinder in a building. That there one is in the London Steam Museum. That there cylinder there is 8 foot in diameter, and they reckon that when they was ordering them, because Harbours was making over 75% of the world's pumps at that time, they were really, really well recognised, and they had a cholera outbreak in London, and they reckon that putting in 3 or 4 of them saved London from a real massive cholera outbreak. Now this is Jabez Bickle. This is another one of his little inventions. I decided, a lot of people, if anybody know down Newland, you can go down Newland and have ice cream. I think he was taking his missus down there on a Sunday afternoon, having a nice ice cream. He's actually buried in St. Erse. He had 5 sons, and most of them worked for Harbours of Hale as well. Now, I put this one in just to show you, there's a young lad there. Again, I know we're going back now, going up to St. Michael's, but just as by the mill pond going up, Henry Harvey built a school. So he wanted people that wanted to learn to read and write and to better themselves. They worked on the boats, of course, and in the foundries, etc. But there was a school for everybody to go and learn, which I thought was, and that school is called, the school is, it's still there. This is just some of the machinery, I won't go on without this. This is the biggest ship they ever built, SS Ramley, 4,000 tons steel ship. This is on South Quay. Now, SS Cannubia, 1857. It was the fastest steam paddle ship built by Harbours of Hale in the world at that time. Fastest steam paddle ship. And it was eventually sold to the Confederates in the American Civil War. And that was up, the North was trying to blockade all the South. Well, this was one of the ships that they couldn't catch for a couple of years. So he had a good run for his money, anyhow. So, built in Hale. This is the last boat, that's on North Quay. Harbour's had 3 boats called Hale. You don't want me to name them all, do you? No. This was Lloyd's Bank, 1935. They decided they'd save money. They took all the top off and just put a roof on it, so it's a single, that's it, But that was a cinema and used in the Second World War as well, for not the top bit, the bottom bit was. So I put this in. There's Lloyd's Bank there now, look. There's just 3 houses because the council decided if we bulldoze them houses down, we'll give a free car park for everybody that come in ale. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be, yeah. They bulldoze them, but there's need machines in there, they'll put money in. Yeah. But anyhow, that's a nice view as well. Bayview Sidings. Slades of Hale. Now, a lot of buildings in this country were built, like you look at Tesco's and things like this, they're really just put up with steel girders, all put together. And a lot of them were manufactured on South Quay, Slades of Hale. 1858 to 1983 they were there, weren't there? 1958, sorry, not 1858. They come from Crowless. Now, I put this one in, this is all the scrap metal. You look at the South Quay there, look, and he's all got he's never straight, and the reason for that is when they built the wooden ships and all years ago, when they had all these things on the front and all, they could put more ships in, tie them up together. They weren't nose to tail. So the ship would come in and then the front of it would be sticking out. So that's how they saved a bit of time and money. That's Hale Station. We'll go on from there. Right opposite Asda now, this is full of houses. This was part of Harbour's Yard. They had a gasworks in Harbour's in 1843. In this yard itself. Then we're going up to the hospital. Miss Frances Ellis. Miss Frances Ellis. There's the Downs. The Downs is all to do with Harbours as well. That was built in 1880. Miss Frances Ellis came there in 1899, 1900. She come from London with her sister. And she had the equivalent of what we would say today, £14 million. And she built churches and chapels, etc., all the way from here to London. And And anyhow, she bought all this, and then she asked the daughters of the Liège, they're Catholic, they were nuns. She invited them to come, and she gave them this, only on the condition that she could spend the rest of her life there with her sister. All that time there, so. Now we look at the hospital there. That 1 or 2 have been in there. Fantastic, really, isn't it? She signed it. This was all called Banks Croft before this was. Anyhow, the nuns decided we'll build an hospital in Ale. So they started roughly 1912, and it opened the week before the First World War. Here we are, 1914. Now a lot of this granite come from the mines just up by Tolroy, in the old scrap mines and all. They wanted to save a bit of money, so they was using the granite from there. This is a hospital car park, as you call it now. You'd have a ticket if you stayed here longer than that now. But that's what they used to keep the animals in the way. Now, anybody's a bard here? Henry Jenner, our first grand bard. Now, he was born in 1848. And he lived until 1934. He married Kitty, whose dad, Rollins, owned that big house. This is what we would call the nurse's home. Now it's called the Marie Therese building now. This isn't Henry Jenner, but his wife, Kitty, she lived until 1936. But he was Hale's first president, was Henry Jenner, and he was the first grand bard of the Gorsets. So let's see, living and born in Hale there. Here we are. This is the first in the operating theatre. I've got to tell you another true story. It's about my late father, but it is true, we've heard this before. My late father worked for we were never allowed to go in what you call where the nunnery was, you know, the nuns. They had 7 acres of land in there. They were self-sufficient. Patrick here went to school in there. And he didn't learn nothing anyhow. But they were, people were afraid, you know what I mean? But my father worked there the last 7 years of his life. And he didn't want to retire at 6, because then you had to retire at 65. And he didn't want to retire. And on the last day, this is true, he got that upset. He didn't want to retire, they put him in the hospital because he collapsed. And he said he woke up 3 o'clock in the morning and he didn't know if he was in heaven or where he was, because round his bed was 3 nuns praying. But they were really, really dedicated people. 1976 is when they left altogether. This is the ladies' ward in the late 1920s. There was smelting works, as I said. Patrick's got a bit of thing there. Here we go, from 1830.